And it looked like the Indiana Fever front office is caught red-handed, lying to reporters.
The Caitlin Clark injury situation is officially a mess because not only is there not more clarity, there's more confusion about what her timeline could be.
Looks like Stephanie White just pulled off the worst magic trick in WNBA history, lying in plain sight about Caitlin Clark's injury. And get this, the internet receipts are already stacked against her. Did she really think fans wouldn't notice? Quick question for you. Who do you trust less right now, Fever reporters or the front office? All right, let's dive into this mess because honestly, it's one of those stories where the more you peel back the layers, the worse it smells. Stephanie White, the head coach of the Indiana Fever, thought she could go on media, say a few words about Caitlin Clark's injury, and we'd all just nod like sheep. But there's one tiny problem. Her timeline doesn't add up. And when your timeline doesn't add up, fans are going to call you out. Simple as that.
It was said on the ESPN broadcast on August 12th that Stephanie White hoped Clark would be back in practice this week. Open portion of practice, Clark is not seen. And Stephanie White afterwards said it's status quo until Clark is back at practice. Well, what changed? Right? I know there's never been a direct timeline, but all the signs seem to point in the direction of Clark returning soon. Even Natasha Howard saying, see you soon, CC. Now it's like, wait and see.
So, let's rewind this whole circus. The official story they tried to sell was that Caitlin Clark somehow got hurt during a workout session around August 7th. Cute, right? Sounds neat, sounds tidy, like they rehearsed it in the locker room before feeding it to the press, except fans aren't blind. And we've got footage, we've got receipts. In that footage, you see Caitlin Clark walking around Phoenix on August 7th, rocking a Prada bag worth more than my car and moving smooth as butter, no limp, no wincing, no sign of any injury. So, unless Prada bags now double as miracle orthopedic devices, the whole she was hurt on the 7th story is absolute trash. Straight trash.
And there's further information coming out that Clark suffered a bit of an ankle injury in the midst of her recovery process. Did that hinder her return? One reporter saying yes, another reporter is saying no. Bottom line is, we need to know a little bit more. We don't need Caitlin Clark's in-depth medical report, but it's fair for fans to wonder if the Fever and the league's biggest star is going to return to the floor this season or what the chances are. And she's been out of action for 5 weeks, so it's not as if some patience hasn't been expressed.
But here's where it gets even funnier. Stephanie White and her little PR squad didn't just stop there. Oh no, they completely doubled down.
I feel like they were lying about her injury as far as like the severity of it. I think it's a really bad injury. I think when they rushed her back that one time, I think she hurt it even more and it pushed the timeline back.
Trying to come back and come back quickly. She needs to make sure that she's 100%. Her competitor wants to play. We're prioritizing her long-term health and wellness is the most important thing.
As bad as it might sound, I think it might be like a season-ending level type of injury and they're hoping to get in the playoffs and they can somehow get her going.
Instead of playing it off, reporters like Scott Agnes, who should be serving us facts, actually started laughing while retelling Caitlin's injury story. And I don't mean an awkward chuckle. I mean laughing. This man looked like he was auditioning for a comedy show while describing how unlucky Caitlin was to get hurt at the end of a workout. Like, bro, are you serious? You're laughing at an injury to the biggest star in women's basketball. That's not just unprofessional. That's straight-up clown behavior.
And the craziest thing about this last groin injury with Caitlin Clark is how it's been covered. The day after she had the groin injury, she was listed as day-to-day. And then a couple weeks after that, then she was listed to being out indefinitely. Now, ESPN had August 12th as the circled return date for Caitlin Clark to get back onto the court. And just yesterday, she was listed as a game time decision for today's game against the Dallas Wings. And then after practice yesterday, Coach Stephanie White basically came out and said, no, Caitlin Clark hasn't even been practicing. So they changed it from a game time decision to her being out. This has been all over the place, and I get it to a certain extent. The fans, the media does not need to know every little thing that's going on with Caitlin Clark's injuries, especially a star player like that. We will never know all the information, nor should we know all the information, and that's actually good for Caitlin. It protects her for when she does come back on the court. She can't be targeted. Teams can't use a certain injury or ailment against her if people don't really know what is going on. But the reporting of her timeline in general, there has been no rhyme or reason to what has been shared about it.
And this is exactly why fans have completely lost trust in the Fever front office and their media pets. It's one thing to spin a story, sports teams do it all the time, but to flat out lie to your own fan base and then smirk while you're doing it, that's not just insulting. It's basically telling us, we think you're too dumb to notice. Newsflash, we noticed.
Nonsense is false hope to get people to keep showing up, keep buying tickets. They got us content creators waiting and hoping, hey, they said she might be, this is the empty time. This is the time for practice that she might return. There you see it. Caitlin Clark on the sidelines, not practicing at all. It's done, you guys. It's over. It's over. We just have to accept the fact there will be no more Caitlin Clark this season. It is what it is. It is a wrap.
Now let's talk about how these lies just keep piling up. Remember that game where Bianca January, the assistant coach, straight up stepped on Caitlin Clark's foot? Yeah, that wasn't just some random accident. It looked sloppy and reckless. And now that incident has been completely buried under the fake timeline White and her crew are pushing. They want you to think Caitlin just took a bad step in practice. Meanwhile, actual footage tells another story. So, which one is it? Did she get hurt in practice, or did your coaching staff injure the star player during a game? You can't have it both ways. And you know what's worse? Caitlin herself is being forced into this PR spin cycle. Every time she talks about her recovery, it feels rehearsed, like the words were written by a Fever intern. I'm working hard, feeling good, just unlucky. Yeah, okay, it's the same script they've been spoon-feeding fans for months, and the problem is we're not buying it, because fans remember the footage from August, fans remember the January foot stomp, fans remember the way the Fever staff has mishandled Caitlin since day one. And when all those puzzle pieces start fitting together, it's not a pretty picture. Let's not forget, Caitlin Clark is in her second year, not some wide-eyed rookie. She's already proven herself, she's already sold out arenas coast to coast, and yet here she is, being treated like some expendable piece the front office can just toy with. If this were the NBA and a coach injured a star player, heads would roll. ESPN would run 24/7 coverage, the league office would be investigating, but in the WNBA, crickets, just a bunch of reporters acting like unpaid interns for the team. Speaking of reporters, Scott Agnes, man, you really played yourself here. You were supposed to be the guy giving fans credible updates. Instead, you went full company man and paraded the nonsense line about a defensive drill injury, and you did it with a smile on your face. The worst part, you actually looked happy Caitlin got hurt, like it gave you a story to milk. That's how bad it's gotten. Fans don't just distrust you, they're calling for a boycott, and honestly, they're not wrong, because the Indiana Fever's credibility is shot, and Stephanie White is the face of the problem. She thought she could shield herself behind reporters, feed them a cute little timeline and just move on. But this is 2025, fans have eyes, fans have social media, and fans have memory. We don't just forget what happened in Phoenix, we don't just forget when Caitlin was pulled from hyping up the fans by Brianna January. These are patterns, not coincidences, and patterns expose the truth. This organization is mismanaging Caitlin Clark. Here's what makes it even spicier. People are starting to believe that the Fever actually want Caitlin to be toned down. Think about it. She comes in, shaking up the league, pulling in crowds bigger than the WNBA has ever seen. Suddenly, the narrative changes. She needs more muscle, she needs to get stronger, she's not ready. And what happened? Caitlin puts on muscle way too fast, ends up with an injury, and suddenly her entire second year is under a cloud. That's not just bad luck, that's bad planning. And who do we blame for bad planning? The coaching staff, Stephanie White's. Fans are even saying Caitlin should go back to Iowa doctors for real evaluations. Because nobody trusts the Fever medical staff anymore. And honestly, who can blame them? If the front office is lying about when she got hurt, what else are they lying about? Are they hiding the severity of the injury? Are they rushing her back too soon? These are real questions fans are asking. And notice, nobody from the Fever has given straight answers. Not once. And here's the kicker. When the truth finally comes out, Stephanie White and her media buddies are gonna look like fools. Absolute fool, because once fans connect all the dots, The Phoenix footage, the Prada bag walk, the January stomp, the laughing reporters, the whole narrative collapses, and White will have nobody to blame but herself. So let's pick up right where we left off, because this story just keeps getting better in the worst way possible. Stephanie White really thought she could step up to the mic, smile for the cameras, and sell us all this workout injury fairy tale. Except the more she talks, the more holes appear in her story, and the wild part, instead of fixing the lie, she keeps digging the hole deeper. Like Stephanie, you're not helping Caitlyn, you're not helping the team, you're basically torching your own credibility in real time. Now let's talk about how the fan base feels about all this, because trust me, Fever fans are fed up. They've had to watch Caitlin Clark get pushed around, targeted on the court, hacked by defenders, ignored by refs, and now this, mishandled by her own coaching staff. Imagine being the most hyped women's basketball player in decades, selling out every arena, breaking viewership records, and your reward is being lied about when you get hurt. That's not how you build a superstar, that's how you ruin one. And make no mistake, the Fever front office is playing with fire here. Caitlyn isn't just another player, she's the engine of the WNBA right now. She's the reason why people who never watch the game are suddenly buying tickets, streaming games, and talking about women's basketball at the dinner table. You take Caitlyn out of the equation, and the league feels it instantly. Attendance drops, TV ratings tank, and all that new money flowing into the WNBA, it slows to a trickle. So when Stephanie White lies about Caitlyn's injury, it's not just bad PR, it's an attack on the league's golden goose. Now let's dig into the muscle narrative, because that's another part of this disaster that nobody's addressing properly. From the minute Caitlyn walked into Indiana, all we heard was she needs to bulk up, she needs more muscle. And sure, strength training makes sense, it's a physical league, and players need to protect themselves, but adding that much muscle that fast, it's a recipe for injury. It doesn't take a medical degree to know that, and guess what happens? Exactly what you'd expect. An overworked body breaks down. But instead of admitting their training program might have been reckless, the Fever decided to pin it on Caitlyn taking a bad step. Yeah, okay, that's like blaming the steering wheel when you crash a car after cutting the brake. And you know what else stinks about this whole situation? The timing. Caitlin Clark was heating up. The Fever were finally starting to show flashes of potential. The league was buzzing, fans were energized, and then boom, the fake injury story hit. Suddenly Caitlyn is sidelined, the Fever stumble, and the whole vibe shifts. That's not just unlucky, that's sabotage. Whether intentional or not, it's sabotage. And the fact that Stephanie White is on camera trying to smooth it over with a phony story makes it worse. But here's where the sarcasm just writes itself. Stephanie White is acting like she's some kind of PR genius, like she really thought nobody would notice the contradictions. Lady, this isn't 1995. Fans aren't waiting for the newspaper to tell them what happened. We've got Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and about 10,000 cell phones recording every second of Caitlyn's career. You can't just erase footage. You can't just rewrite history. Fans literally have slow-motion breakdowns of games, time-stamped clips, and side-by-side comparison. You're not fooling anybody. And speaking of not fooling anybody, Scott Agnes, my guy, you need to take a seat, because laughing while explaining Caitlyn's injury isn't just unprofessional, it's downright disrespectful. You're supposed to be the guy delivering facts, but instead you turned into a hype man for the Fever's PR department. And the worst part, you actually looked like you enjoyed spreading the lie. Like who raised you, who taught you journalism meant parroting whatever the team told you and adding a chuckle for flair. No wonder fans are saying boycott Scott, because once you lose credibility, you don't get it back, and Scott Agnes lost his in about 5 seconds flat. Now let's zoom out a little, because this isn't just about one lie or one injury. This is about a culture of disrespect toward Caitlin Clark and her fanbase. From the moment she entered the league, it's been one roadblock after another. Refs swallowing whistles when she gets hacked, commentators nitpicking her every move, coaches sidelining her energy, and now reporters lying about her health. It's like there's a coordinated effort to dim her shine, and the crazy part, it's not working. Fans are still riding for Caitlyn harder than ever. Every lie, every cheap shot, every shady move only makes her fan base louder and more loyal. But let's not pretend this isn't dangerous, because Caitlin Clark isn't invincible, she's human, and if the Fever keep mishandling her, it's her career that's at risk. Every unnecessary injury, every rushed recovery, every shady media spin, it all adds up, and before long, it could cut her career short. That's the nightmare scenario, and if that happens, trust me, the backlash on Stephanie White and the Fever will be historic. Now let's talk about Brianna January for a second, because her name keeps popping up in all this. First, she steps on Caitlyn's foot, then she's the one pulling Caitlyn back when she's hyping up fans. What does that look like? It looks like somebody who doesn't want Caitlyn to shine too bright. And if that's true, it's pathetic, because last I checked, this is professional sport. The goal is to win games, not suppress your star player's personality, and yet here we are, watching Caitlyn get dimmed down by her own coaching staff. It's not just incompetence, it's sabotage dressed up as coaching. And here's where Stephanie White's instant regret comes in, because by lying about this injury, she didn't just cover up the truth, she lit a fire under Caitlyn's fans. She turned a simple injury into a full-blown scandal. Now every move she makes, every word she says is going to be scrutinized. Fans aren't going to take her word for anything. Reporters outside of Indiana are already sniffing around this story. And once national outlets get involved, White is going to wish she kept her mouth shut. Let's also not ignore how this makes the WNBA look. The league has been fighting tooth and nail for legitimacy, for recognition, for growth. Caitlyn Clark gave them all that in one package. And what happens? Her own team can't even be honest about an injury. That's amateur hour. That's the kind of nonsense that makes casual fans roll their eyes and say, see, this league isn't serious, and that's unfair to every other player who's grinding every night. The WNBA deserves better. Caitlyn Clark deserves better. But instead, they've got Stephanie White lying on camera like she's auditioning for reality TV. And let's be real, Caitlyn Clark herself probably knows what's going on. She's too smart not. She knows the timeline doesn't add up. She knows the media spin is bogus. But she's stuck because what is she supposed to do? Call out her own coach in the middle of the season? Risk being labeled difficult or ungrateful? She's trapped in the same PR web as the fans, forced to smile and nod while Stephanie White tells lies on her behalf. And that's the saddest part. Caitlyn is being silenced in her own story. So where does this go from here? Well, one of two things is going to happen. Either the Fever come clean, admit they botched this, and start treating Caitlyn like the franchise player she is, or more likely, they keep lying, the fans keep receipts, and eventually the truth explodes all over them. And when that happens, Stephanie White won't just regret lying, she'll regret ever opening her mouth at all.